My job is a hotel sleep tester, and I stay in various hotels for free. I accidentally drank too much before the clock today. When I opened my eyes the next day, there was a quiet, beautiful boy lying on the ground. Here's the thing. Our company has opened a new hotel, and as a hotel sleep tester, I have the responsibility to experience the free happiness for myself. The manager's eldest brother was tireless in destroying people, entertaining me with fake wine, and after a few glasses, people almost got cold. But I kept in mind the mission in my heart, did not forget my original intention, and walked slowly to the room, waking up with a hangover, in bed and under the bed. This beautiful boy and I stared at each other, and the atmosphere was very embarrassing. He is very good looking, with a bit of childishness between his seductive eyebrows and eyes, and a pair of peach blossom eyes are lazily open. The wine drunk is fake, and the person lying on the ground is real. I suppressed my shock, looked at this handsome facial features that were wider than my face, and said indiscriminately, "Hello, are you my colleague?" He walked over on his long legs, his eyes half squinted, and he smiled angrily. "You don't know who I am, perverted." I kicked him down in a fit of rage. At this time, there was a lazy, weak voice under the bed. "I'm your boss. I suspect he's purely." How did I not know I had such a young and handsome boss? He stood up and stared at me angrily, the corners of his mouth gradually rising. Friendly reminder. My name is Lambert Benson. My head buzzed. It's like being struck by lightning. Remember, yesterday the manager's eldest brother mentioned it, and the new manager also came to experience life. His name is Lambert Benson. Am I confused? Actually destroyed the new boss. The first time we met, there were a lot of tricks. Listen to me, it's all a misunderstanding. I trembled and got up, but my feet were weak, and the whole person fell straight forward, and a fierce woman pounced on the man, and fell firmly with him. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." I stood up with his abs on his feet, and the scare was almost gone. "Last night we wouldn't be like that, would we?" His eyes looked like he was looking at a psychopath. "You think beautiful." I breathed a sigh of relief. I had to admire myself. I could sit still like this, just this steadiness, which ordinary people can do. He paused slightly, and then finished his sentence angrily. "It's just that you got drunk, went to the wrong room, and kicked me out of bed. I was just stupid. Why don't you lock up? When I was young and went out, I didn't have any sense of safety." He sighed. "I was too sleepy yesterday to lock the door. Who knew you were in?" It was like I had been struck by lightning again. It's worse than destroying him. I struggled to remember what had happened last night, and the alcohol paralyzed my brain, and I couldn't remember anything. Reflect on it. I'll take a shower first. He left this sentence and walked to the toilet with Hatch. My brother is in such good shape that my eyes are glancing at him as if I can't control it. Very good. This body proportion. I didn't destroy him last night. It's a pity. The phone rang. I fumbled for a long time to find it, picked it up, and saw that it was Gail Antoinette, a scumbag, who called me and asked me to move my things quickly. This thing is not human. It cheated, and it was with my best friend. Fire prevention, anti-theft and anti-girlfriends. We share a house, and I still live in a room with my girlfriends, right under my nose. Stunned, Lambert Benson came out of the bathroom. Gail Antoinette was still chattering on the phone, and the picture of the beautiful man in front of me in the bath aroused my fighting spirit. "Okay, don't talk nonsense. You get my things ready, and I'll bring my new boyfriend over to get them later." Gail Antoinette was amused. "Olivia Ted, you can blow it. Don't spend money on renting men for the sake of this little face." I gritted my teeth and hung up the phone, glanced at Lambert Benson, and hesitated to speak. "You heard that too, or else come with me." "Okay." He didn't put up any resistance. He agreed too quickly, and I had some difficulty accepting it. "You know what I told you to do, right?" He snorted and looked at me lazily. "You know." He just said I paid for it. I nodded blankly. The corners of his lips twitched. "That's right. I mean you can rent it. It's insulting." Lambert Benson drove me off in his Porsche, and we were both silent at first. I still haven't figured out what happened last night. Even if I drank too much and pounced on the man, why was he kicked under the bed by me without any resistance? After glancing at his perfect jawline countless times, I finally couldn't help it. You weren't drunk last night. Why didn't you wake me up? He rubbed his red eyes and sighed. Probably because I saw you crying on the bed and wiping away your tears, and I felt quite pitiful. Let's go. The guy is very handsome, but it's a pity that he has a mouth. As it turns out, I'm right. Lambert Benson is not only broken-mouthed, but also has a gossip heart, and I have to tell you why he broke up with Gail Antoinette. I didn't want to say that he was familiar with the enemy, so I had to say that. I gritted my teeth and complained about the dog man and woman all the way, and when I got to the door of the share house, my fists were hard. My stuff was just left alone at the door, and the dead scumbag wouldn't even let me in. I slammed the door angrily, and it took me a long time to show a face through the crack in the door. Gail Antoinette glanced at Lambert Benson, and his tone was a little sour. I really brought someone here, and I put everything at the door for you. You can see if there is anything missing. I was about to move, but Lambert Benson suddenly grabbed me and shook his head at me. What the scumbag has touched, let's not touch it. And he shook the keys of his Porsche. I can't put too many things in this car, so why don't I give you an address, and you can send it to me? Gail Antoinette was so angry that she pouted disdainfully. You can act. I believe you are a ghost. Lambert Benson's lips curled. Don't believe it. I'm going to give you a live show. With that, Lambert Benson turned his face sideways and kissed me. Of course, Lambert Benson didn't really talk, just borrowed the position, but from Gail Antoinette's point of view, it looked like a kiss. His handsome face was close in front of him. The pores on his face were clearly visible, and at such a close distance, a youthful breath came to his face. Even though it was just a kiss, my face burned red when it was so close. He let go of me, and Gail Antoinette's face was hard to see. Now you believe it, right? At this time, the scumbag also came out, just in time to witness Lambert Benson hugging me and kissing. She pouted. Who are you acting for? Lambert Benson sneered. Who are you pretending to be innocent? Lambert Benson licked his lips and tossed Gail Antoinette a business card. This is my home address. Just send her things over, and pay for it. Gail Antoinette glanced at the business card and was shocked. Lambert Benson put his arms around me proudly, still refusing to forgive. From now on, we will walk our red carpet. You will walk your zebra crossing. That's all. After saying that, he put his arm around me and turned to leave. Walking out of the community, I made sure that I was out of the surveillance of the dog man and woman, and quickly took his arm off of me. I didn't have time to talk to him, so I quickly called my girlfriend and begged to take him in. Is worthy of being a best friend? And rejected me directly. No, dear, my boyfriend has been here for the past 2 days, and it's not very convenient. You hold on for 2 days, and in a few days I will be able to take you in. All right, I really don't treat a single dog as a person. I was feeling sad when Lambert Benson took my Porsche keys and punched me. Let's go. Get in the car. Where? The corners of his lips twitched. You'll know when you get there. I came to his house in a daze, and standing in front of his house, I hesitated to enter. He is young, and when he can't control himself, he has dry firewood. What if the friction starts electricity? Come in. He looked back and saw me standing at the door, his beautiful eyebrows twisted into a ball. How did you come to your house? You don't have nowhere to go. So brave last night, so cowardly today. He managed to stir up my fighting spirit. As if the leader was inspecting, I walked around inside and out with my hands behind my back, and there was no trace of a woman in his house. This cargo captain is so handsome and single, shouldn't it? Can you lend me a piece of your dress? I smelled of alcohol and had a headache. Okay. He turned around and walked into the bedroom, pulled out a set of t-shirts and shorts and threw them at me. Wear this. I'll go take a shower first. At the same time, he took off his t-shirt directly, revealing his well-defined, 8-pack abs. This guy definitely did it on purpose, and I swallowed it hard without being angry. Kaslan's eyes frantically ran wildly, and for a few seconds, I coughed a few times. Be careful, there's a girl here. Lambert Benson was stunned for a moment and sighed. Oh, I haven't gotten used to having one more person in the house. He went to take a bath, and I hurriedly reported to my sisters in the Weshut group, and this group of kobold military advisors offered advice one after another. It's all gone to his house. Isn't it appropriate for something to happen? You take a shower, pretend to slippery, and let him carry you out, eh? Forget it. If he can't hold it, how embarrassed you will be. Listen, this is what people say. Changing into Lambert Benson's t-shirt, big pants, and pulling his slippers just out of the bedroom, suddenly the sound of the door lock turning. A fashionable and cute beautiful girl stood at the door and looked at me with a complicated expression. The atmosphere is awkward. My head buzzed, and without asking, she told me who she was with a murderous look. Her eyes seemed to be shooting up and down, and her face was getting worse and worse. The Lambert Benson clothes on me, the sound of water running in the bathroom, so much strong evidence. I can't seem to explain it. Who are you? She spoke coldly. I twitched the corners of my mouth, and was about to explain, when the bathroom door suddenly opened. Why are you here? Lambert Benson walked out as he wiped his hair, and when he saw her, his tone was not very good. As soon as Lambert Benson appeared, the girl's attitude immediately changed, and she walked over aggrievedly. Send you it. Why don't you reply? I don't want to go back. Lambert Benson had a stinky face and an impatient tone. The girl didn't care about his attitude, and pointed at me, her tone sour as if she had eaten a yo-yo plum. Who is she? How is it in your house? He frowned. You don't care. This attitude is so cold that even I can't stand it. The girl's eyes immediately turned red. She bit her lip and asked a very fatal question. You like her? I waited for him to return my innocence, but this guy suddenly glanced at me, with a smile and stretched lazily. Don't you see it all? What else do you ask? I was shocked. This answer was so good that the girl misunderstood. Not leaving. His voice grew colder. He really did it. The girls were crying, and he didn't have any sense of pity and cherishment. I'm going to call your mom. Whatever. No. Teresa Benson. Are you finished? He has a small face, and he looks like a dead pig, who is not afraid of boiling water. Seeing the girl crying and running out, I couldn't help but ask him, why don't you hurry up and chase him? He shook his head. No, I'm going to go to you. All right. When I didn't say, he snorted, rubbed his eyes, and said, I'll go back to the house and get some sleep, and you can rest for a while. I remembered that last night's review hadn't been written yet, and shook my head. You sleep. I'll write the review first, and I'm in a hurry to publicize it. He pouted. Who's in charge of publicity? I'll tell him we'll talk about it tomorrow. Long live the boss. He squinted at me. Do you know I'm your boss at this point? When I think of last night, my hair is numb. As long as you don't tell me about last night, you can do anything. He was stunned for a moment. I'm not interested in my sister. I mean, I can do housework, cook and so on to compensate you. And you see that your house is quite messy. I sighed and corrected his bad ideas. I'll leave you with lunch. Can't you be polite to me? Lambert Benson also believes in me too much, and this chef can lose out to 99% of people. I was in a hurry, and the kitchen was made like a crime scene by me. Lambert Benson took a look at Hatch and was startled. There was a burglar in the house just now. Why are there traces of a fight everywhere? I have the courage to admit, I did it. Lambert Benson sighed. So what are we going to eat? Eggs and scrambled tomatoes, vinegared shredded potatoes. Lambert Benson tasted 2 chopsticks. His eyebrows furrowed. Not bad. He put down his chopsticks, and poured a few sips of cool white water. I also took a chopstick and tasted it. It was salty to death. All right. Salty and light really depends on luck. My mood has not been affected. I can't cook is really nothing. It's a big deal to order takeout. Otherwise, I'll order takeout. Forget it. I'll do it. He sighed and walked on his long legs to the kitchen. You can cook. I was shocked. He has fine skin and tender meat, and he doesn't look like he can cook. Do it yourself once in a while. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing his muscular arms. I also want to use some spare heat. So what can I do for you? Just help me eat. Then I can really help you. As soon as I turned around, he suddenly stopped me. Hey, you can really help with a favor. He looked at me with a smile, the corners of his lips gradually rising. Help me tie my apron. Big brother, don't you have long hands? This guy saw my thoughts, and his face was innocent, and his expression was very sincere. I have flour on both hands now, and I have to wash it. It's too troublesome. I stared at his little face for a long time, and I couldn't see any acting ingredients. Forget it, let's tie it. Nothing can be delayed. I held my apron and wrapped my arms around his waist, accidentally touching his waist with my hands. Hiss! I almost cried as a fierce woman. This guy's waist is thinner than mine, and there is no fat in the waistline. Hard, and a hormonal breath is blowing in my face. He turned his head and smiled at the corners of his mouth. Sister, why are you red? Originally, I asked him to cook, but I was still a little reluctant to go. Well, at the end of the day, this bit of guilt is gone. I was afraid that he would say something in a while, so I quickly ran out and stayed away from him. But it didn't take long for him to call out to me. My phone is ringing. It's in the bedroom. Please help me take it off. I reluctantly walked into his bedroom and looked at the caller ID on my phone, and my scalp was numb. Hurry up and send him over with small steps. Your phone. My mother. He frowned, then smiled playfully. Take it. How dare I? Don't want a little life. Forcibly stuffed his phone to him. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he smiled evilly. When you kicked me out of bed last night, you didn't do that. I gave him a wide eye. It's annoying. I deliberately rubbed when I walked out, just to hear if it had anything to do with me. As a result, as soon as Lambert Benson opened his mouth, he shook me. That's right, I brought someone home. I was nervous. He quarreled with his little girlfriend, but he was definitely put in me. He couldn't hear anything on the phone, but he said it one after another. Who I'm with, it doesn't matter to her. She doesn't care. It's my business. Don't worry about it. Then, he hung up the phone. In the evening, I realized a very serious problem. Is his home a one-bedroom or a studio? How should the two of us live? I threw the question at him, and Lambert Benson scratched his hair. The corners of his lips curled in a beautiful curvature, and his obsidian eyes gleamed with a sly light. Old rules, he said lightly. I only have one bed in my house, and I don't mind if you sleep in it. Don't even think about it. I can't sleep in the same bed with you. Lambert Benson glanced up at me, the smile growing in his eyes. What do you want? The old rule is that I sleep on the ground, and you sleep on the bed. Me. Lambert Benson suddenly moved forward, and the handsome face that resembled Yang Yang got closer and closer to me, almost touching the tip of my nose. My heart beat faster, my little face turned red, and even the roots of my ears burned. Lambert Benson leaned over and stared at me, his eyes as sly as his smile. Sister, it turns out that you still have this kind of thought. You said it earlier. I'm numb. His tone was too sultry, but I couldn't, not to be outdone. I waved my hand. Sleep. I don't need you to sleep with me today. The next morning, I got up as fast as I could, washed, and was about to go out, but someone grabbed me by the collar. When I looked back, I met a pair of obsidian eyes. He stared at me with a smile. Where are you going? Where else can I go? Go to work. He scratched at the coup's hair. Wait for me, a moment. 10 minutes later, Lambert Benson was standing in front of me in a suit and a small tie. Let's go. I go to work too. What class do you go to? I remember that he only went to report the day after tomorrow. He stretched. I have decided to learn more about the company and take the initiative to go among the masses. I didn't want him to be my boss, so I rolled my eyes. Wouldn't it be okay to stay at home? As a result, he was not happy. Don't discourage me. As soon as he finished speaking, he threw me a bunch of car keys. You can drive. So what are you doing? Get in the car. I've got to think about my future strategic plan in the car. Hey. Lambert Benson's appearance caused a lot of shock in the company, and he was discussed in various gossip groups. When I went out to get coffee, I could see a few colleagues eating his melons. Have you heard? The newcomer, Lambert Benson, took the woman home and was caught by his little girlfriend. I was shaken, and my ears immediately stood up. Really? Of course it's true. That little girlfriend's family has cooperation with our company, which I heard from their company. It is said that the woman was in the shower at the time, and the woman was wearing Lambert Benson's clothes. My scalp is hard. I was afraid that I would eat melons, and eat my own house, so I crawled back to my workstation. Back at the workstation, absent-mindedly facing the computer, My brain went blank. What are you doing? At this moment, a lazy voice sounded from behind him. Startled, I turned around and crashed into a pair of dark eyes. Work. He pouted. You've been staring at this form for a long time. Just working like this. I pursed my lips and didn't answer. He sighed and reached out to touch my forehead, his tone much softer. Uncomfortable. I lied. No, I'm wondering how to write a plan. Then come with me to lunch. I'm not hungry. You can go. There are so many people in the company who are hungry for him, and I don't want to be the target of public criticism. Lambert Benson furrowed his eyebrows and looked me up and down a few times. You're not fat. What kind of weight do you lose? All right, it's rare for him to be objective. I'm not going. I'm not done. Lambert Benson sneered a few times, his eyes full of displeasure. If you don't want to eat with me, forget it. Don't force it. After saying that, he stood up and walked away with his long legs. Ella from the propaganda department saw him walking towards this direction, and also walked out slowly, creating a chance encounter. Didn't Lambert Benson eat too? What a coincidence. Let's go out together. Lambert Benson nodded, as if to give her some kind of acquiescence, and she obediently followed Lambert Benson's side by side. I froze where I was. I know that playboy is his nature, but seeing him with other girls, I feel a little uncomfortable inexplicably. Everyone went to eat one after another, but I was still busy, making up for the hotel sleep trial copy. Fake wine hurts people, and I don't remember anything else except Lambert Benson's handsome face. While I was meditating, a bento was suddenly placed on my desk. Immediately after, a familiar voice sounded from behind. Eat first, and then have the strength to make up the story. Turning around, he bumped into a pair of scorching peach eyes. For a moment, I almost fell into it. Oh, you're done, I said sourly. Lambert Benson frowned. What are we done? You're not. Before I could finish speaking, I saw Ella walking towards her in a flash. Oh, it's okay. I'm afraid that my house will collapse until I eat melons. So I have been avoiding Lambert Benson when I go to work. But I'm afraid of something. So he wanders around the office in the afternoon when he has nothing to do. Probably seeing that I ignored him, he slipped up to me, looked down at my feet, and hooked the corners of his lips. Olivia Ted, how do you wear slippers? Yes, I usually like to put a pair of slippers in the company, wear flat shoes on the road, and when I write manuscripts, I like to wear slippers for inspiration. He talked about this, and I think he has nothing to say. In order to strike up a conversation with me, it was a lot of effort. Report to the boss. You made me make the company my home. He raised an eyebrow, his cold voice lazily ringing. Okay, you, someone who dares to kick your boss to the ground. I'm numb. This guy definitely did it on purpose. And now it's okay. I'm the center of attention for the whole office. He slowly returned to his office, but left the girl alone to bear the pressure. After a while, this guy messaged me again. Lambert Benson, are you busy right now? Don't be busy, coming to my office. I was so angry that I didn't want to pay attention to him, and pretended not to see it. Lambert Benson. Ignore me. After another 5 minutes, a red envelope message blinded my dog's eye. You can never wake up someone who is pretending to be asleep, but the red envelope can. No matter what our estrangement is, a red envelope will take us back to the way we were. I open a red envelope from the point of goodness. It's still a big bag. Okay boss, I'll come now. I walked into his office from the good stream, and he looked up at me. Only then did I notice that his eyelashes were long and curly, which made girls envious. Boss, you're looking for me. He lifted his chin and handed me a bag of potato chips. Wait a minute, there's a meeting later. Oh, then wait. Alone with him, I felt like I was on pins and needles. He was so long that he could be touched as if he didn't know which psychiatric hospital he had escaped from. Soon, all the participants in the meeting were in place, and Ella from the propaganda department didn't know what was wrong today, and she embarrassed me as soon as she came up. What this hotel review is writing about, it's not attractive at all. There's no emotion at all in writing. Rubbish. Me, what? Ella looked at me with disdain in her eyes, but when she turned her head to face Lambert Benson, her charming fawn eyes suddenly changed to a different emotion. I pondered for a moment and figured out that Ella must like Lambert Benson. probably because of what he said in public that afternoon. Ella became hostile to me. Ella is popular and very likable to everyone. And after saying this, she began to incite the masses again. Tell me what you think of this review. She smiled sweetly, but at the moment it seemed to me to be full of malice. She usually gets along better with everyone than me, and her position is higher than mine. And as soon as she said this, some people stood on her side and criticized my manuscript. I was so angry that I couldn't speak. The official level crushed people to death. My manuscript was going to pass Ella. She said no. No matter how good I felt, I couldn't help it. Ahem. At this time, the person who had been keeping his head down and silent suddenly coughed lightly. The attitude was not loud, but the office suddenly fell silent, and they all looked at him. Lambert Benson hung his head, and that's when I noticed that his eyelashes were long and curly, and a large shadow swept under his eyes, and there was no emotion to be seen. He coughed, and the noisy conference room fell silent. In my memory, this guy has never been serious. I didn't expect it to be so deterrent. Lambert Benson picked up my manuscript, read it carefully, and pulled it off with his backhand. I think it's a pretty good draft. His tone was light, but loud. Everyone present was stunned for a moment. I didn't expect him to be on my side. Then, he raised his head, his gaze swept over everyone's faces, and the corners of his lips curled slightly. What do you think? All of you are masters in the workplace, and when you see him on my side, you abandon Ella one after another, and your comments on my manuscript have taken a sharp turn. Ella was dumbfounded, biting her lip, unwilling to let go, and actually asked Lambert Benson why. Lambert Benson frowned, his voice soft, but intimidating. Do you need me to explain it to you? Ella was startled, glared at me unwillingly, and didn't dare say anything more. Lambert Benson's bony fingers tapped rhythmically on the tabletop, not light or heavy, but not offensive. This article is not as big as those false emptiness. I hate that kind of heavenly enjoyment the most. Paradise, of course. If any of you really experience it, I won't say anything. The purpose of writing tweets is to provide customers with a real experience of living, not to fool customers. This article is based on a guest trial stay experience, and highlights the characteristics of our hotel in detail. Anyone else, if I hadn't heard it with my own ears, I wouldn't have believed that this thing could say such profound words. It's just my bosom friend. Lambert Benson was on my side, and no one dared to raise any objections. Ella was no longer convinced, and she had no choice but to obediently adopt my plan. The meeting was dismissed, and I was about to go out to cook for afternoon tea, when Lambert Benson suddenly called out to me, Olivia Ted, you stay for a moment. Melon-eating masses. Lambert Benson left me alone, and provided fresh materials for the melon eaters, and the last colleague who left thoughtfully closed the door. Thank you. The two of us were left in the office, and the thing finally showed its true face, beckoning with a hippie smile. Come here, help me see this. I walked over in confusion and craned my neck to see that he had asked me to help him pick out women's slippers. A limited edition slipper on the screen. Think of the $20 slippers on my feet. All I can say is that happiness is not shared between people. Gifted. I unconsciously remembered that fashionable and cute beautiful girl. The corners of Lambert Benson's lips lifted and he said, hurry up and help me choose. I pointed to a style I've been looking at for a long time. This. He glanced at his phone and nodded. Good taste. I pouted. It's not the one who didn't spend the money. He smiled and waved his hand. Go out to work. Remember to wait for me after work. What? Lambert Benson looked at me confused and raised an eyebrow. I remember you seemed to be homeless. I followed him home. My girlfriend is moving in with her boyfriend, and it will take 2 days to transfer the apartment she rented to me. I can't help it. I have to endure it for 2 more days. Maybe it's because I forgot to close the window, and woke up in the middle of the night with a sore throat, and a heart-rending cough. Snot and tears flowed down together. I wanted to ask him if he had any cold medicine at home, but at 1 o'clock in the middle of the night, I was too embarrassed to disturb him. I endured it, but the cough was intermittent, and my throat was dry like it was on fire. But he was still awakened, and suddenly a voice sounded in the darkness. Are you all right? Then, the bedroom light suddenly came on, and Lambert Benson looked at me with a concerned expression. Got a cold. I nodded weakly. As I spoke, I couldn't hold back a sneeze that stained his pajamas. It's over. I can't afford to lose the series when I get dirty. Don't move. His voice came from the top of his head. Before I could react, he had already pulled out a tissue and gently swept it under my eyes, then my nose, and then my mouth. Look at you. Your face is covered with snot and tears. All right. How do I sound? A little spoiled. I don't have any medicine at home. I'll go out and buy it for you. After saying that, he didn't wait for me to speak, turned around and left. It didn't take long for the people to come back and stuff me with a glass of water and a bag of paper. I've poured you a cup of hot water. Drink more hot water. And if you have a runny nose, wipe it with a cotton towel so that it won't rub your nose red. Lambert Benson quickly came back wheezing. He probably ran too quickly, panting when he spoke, and there were small beads of sweat on the tip of his tall nose. In the middle of the night, his hair was curled, his whole body was panting, and he looked a little funny, but my heart beat a few beats faster without warning. Finish these pills and get some sleep tomorrow. He handed me a bottle cap with 5 or 6 colors in it. I swallowed them all, and he handed me a glass of warm water just in time. After swallowing the medicine, my eyes fell on his stained white twin. I was so scared that I asked, "How much is this?" "I'll pay you for it." Lambert Benson looks down at the t-shirt and smiles banterfully. "I really want to pay for it." I nodded with tears in my eyes. "Gee, this is new this year. It's still limited. I think it's like 5,000 pieces." I almost cried, gritted my teeth and asked, "Is it okay to install?" He nodded cheerfully. "Okay. How many installments would you like to install? You say." He pondered for a moment, his gaze burning as if it were about to melt me. "If you want me to say it's a lifetime." My heart was beating faster than she could. What did he mean by that? What do you mean? But I was so uncomfortable that my head was like a pulp, and I didn't have the heart to think about what he meant. Maybe it was the power of the medicine that worked, and it wasn't long before I fell asleep in a groggy state. When I woke up, I felt much more comfortable, and I got up in a daze, and Lambert Benson had already prepared breakfast. There was porridge and fritters, as well as fruits and pickles. I was shocked and glanced up at Lambert Benson. "You did it." He sat upright, but his tone was ruffian. "Just like last night. I don't have the craft. I ordered it." He paused. "Is the cold better?" "Much better." He looked at me with a smile and raised his eyebrows. "In the future, pay attention to the buttons on your chest in your pajamas, because it is easy to pour air into the window without closing the window." I was stunned. Then, following his line of sight, he looked down and saw that a few buttons on the collar had been opened at some point. "Shame on you." I clutched my chest, quickly turned around and fastened the buttons, and then walked to the table and sat down. Recovered from a serious illness, I should have a good appetite, but I don't have any appetite at all, and my mind is full of what he said last night. I don't seem to be as repulsive to him as I was at the beginning. Lambert Benson suddenly smiled and glanced at me. "Last night, when I think of last night, my heart is beating like thunder." He waved his hand. "Forget it. Let me ask you another way. What do you think of a man's behavior that makes his boyfriend powerful?" I was stunned. And he asked me this? I thought it was to continue the discussion on the topic of last night. I was a little disappointed and gritted my teeth angrily. Empty cart. At this time, my mobile phone rang suddenly, and when I opened it, it was my best friend. "Hey, Olivia Ted, I've got good news for you. You'll be able to move here today. My luggage has been removed, and the keys are in the meter box for you." I was stunned, as if I had an empty piece in my heart, hung up the phone, and my mood inexplicably fell to the bottom. I thought I should be happy to be able to move out of Lambert Benson, but no, I'm getting used to having him in my life. After breakfast, Lambert Benson insisted on sending me over. It's really my best friend, and when I moved out, I didn't leave anything. My stuff at Gail Antoinette is also far away. I can't ask this scumbag, just buy a new one. There's a big mall downstairs, and when Lambert Benson heard I was going to buy something, he went with him. He is a big man, and his shopping enthusiasm is higher than mine, and he sees what is good and what he takes, and he doesn't think about the price at all. There are so many things that I can afford at my salary. When I was queuing up to check out, The child was about to cry, and when I finally got in line, he suddenly pushed me aside. He chuckled, "I'll settle the bill, and I'll give you a warm house." Well, this gift is too big for me to afford. I was about to rush to pay the bill, but he grabbed me by the collar and pulled it aside. The corners of Lambert Benson's mouth twitched. "You should give me a chance to show off my boyfriend's power." Lambert Benson was gone, and I looked at the room with a lot of things he bought, and I was a little confused. I didn't understand what he meant, but I knew that, when I was with him, I was very happy, and after he left, my heart felt like something empty. Moreover, this vacancy in the heart, as time passes, becomes more and more obvious. I was alone at home, and I was suddenly a little bored. If Lambert Benson had been here, he would have had more to say. Knock, knock, knock. At this time, someone suddenly knocked on my door. I was stunned. I just moved over, and the courier address hasn't had time to change. Who can come? I opened the door in confusion. A pair of attractive peach blossom eyes suddenly crashed into my field of vision. I didn't expect Lambert Benson to be back. It's only been a few hours, and this kid can't hold back his thoughts about me. After all, he is still young and can't hold his breath. He also made an excuse for the operation. "Sister, your scumbag ex-boyfriend sent your luggage to my house, and I'll send it to you." That's when I noticed the luggage behind him. For such good reason. "Then come in." He popped into my house, glanced at the instant noodles on the table, and frowned. "How do you eat this?" I sighed. "I don't know how to cook, and I don't want to order takeout." He picked up the bubble noodles, poured them into the trash can, and then pulled me out, saying as he went, "Instant noodles are unhealthy. I'll take you out to eat." Lambert Benson took me to a nearby Sichuan restaurant and ordered a large table of dishes, all of which I loved. "I'm busy cooking. It's delicious. It's delicious. But it's just too spicy, and I'm sweating profusely." Lambert Benson barely moved his chopsticks and watched me cook in silence. My mouth was swollen with a spicy sensation, and Lambert Benson handed me a bottle of water at the right time. "Thank you." After drinking, I suddenly realized a problem. Is this your water?" Lambert Benson smiled. "I'll unscrew it for you." "I haven't drunk it." I exhaled, feeling a little disappointed inexplicably, and I didn't seem to be very repulsive about kissing him indirectly. Just eating. I didn't think it was enjoyable, so I ordered a few more beers. I don't drink well, and I get dizzy after 2 or 3 bottles of beer. It was Lambert Benson who staggered as I walked, and in the end, it was Lambert Benson who put my arm around me and managed to walk in a straight line. When I went out, as soon as the wind blew, I instantly felt like the world was spinning. My feet were soft, but thanks to Lambert Benson's quick hands, I was held in his arms. I touched the tip of his nose, and could even see his tight pores. In an instant, my heart was beating wildly. His breath gradually became hot and sprayed on his face, and I couldn't help but lose myself. Lambert Benson's eyes burned to reflect my crimson complexion. He swallowed his throat, his lips slightly open, and leaned over gently. My face burned and my heart was beating like thunder. Watching this handsome face get closer and closer, I gently closed my eyes. I was nervous and ready to bear the love, but suddenly I felt a wave of nausea in my stomach, and I couldn't hold back for a while, and I vomited it out. The atmosphere went on like this. Thankfully, I didn't throw it in his face, but another piece of clothing was reimbursed. Good guy. I owe it for the rest of my life. My taste died, and while I was still conscious, I quickly pushed him away and ran away with a roll. I'm really embarrassed to death, but I didn't expect that there would be even more embarrassing. When I came back from lunch today, the Mellon friends fried the pot. Some people said that, when they saw Lambert Benson's girlfriend coming to look for him at work, they were in the office and locked the door. I was puzzled when the door to Lambert Benson's office opened. A petite, fashionable and cute beautiful girl crashed into sight. I was stunned. Teresa Benson. Why is she here? Her gaze fell on my face, and I felt a little weak. He lowered his head to avoid her gaze, but he looked at the sandals she was wearing, which looked a little familiar. After a few seconds, my head buzzed. Isn't this the pair that Lambert Benson helped him counsel? It turned out to be for her. My mood sank to the bottom. Yesterday he wanted to kiss me, but today he saw other girls wearing the sandals he chose. What the hell am I? In a distraction, Teresa Benson was already walking towards me, with her toes in. She hadn't gone far before Lambert Benson came out. Teresa Benson froze, probably because Lambert Benson was there, and she glanced at me, without saying a word, without saying anything. He passed by me. Lambert Benson furrowed his eyebrows, not in a good mood. I was so confused that I didn't want to see him, so I turned around and went back to my desk to start pretending. He stood not far behind me for a long time, but probably because of the crowd, he didn't say anything. My heart was so congested that I didn't want to work all afternoon. The sudden appearance of Teresa Benson made me realize that I didn't just like Lambert Benson, but that I really liked him. But he likes Teresa Benson. I'm nothing. I figured out that a low-quality relationship is not as good as a high-quality single, so I deliberately avoided Lambert Benson. He wasn't stupid. He must have sensed it a long time ago, and he began to deliberately distance himself from me. Everyone knows it. This week, our company team building went to Mayan Reservoir to play. I didn't want to go, but I couldn't resist the invitation of the little girl, so I went hard. However, I heard good news. Lambert Benson doesn't get on a bus with us. He drives himself. On the day of the team building, I gathered at the door of the company. I got up late. I didn't even put on makeup, and I hurried to the meeting place. Finally arrived 10 minutes before departure, gasping and panting. He climbed into the car and saw Lambert Benson sitting alone in the front seat. Looking around, only one spot next to him was vacant. The corners of his lips twitched, and he patted the empty seat next to him. Don't stand still. Come and sit. Is it too late for me to get out of the car? I stubbornly walked over to the empty seat next to him, and sat down. Suddenly, I felt that all kinds of complicated eyes behind me were about to penetrate me. Didn't you eat breakfast? Did you? I brought it to you. Lambert Benson pulls out a set of fast food paper bags, which is my favorite brand to eat. Seriously, I really want to eat it, but reason tells me that I can't. I've already had breakfast. Thank you. I refused to cook against my will, but my stomach was screaming. Lambert Benson's eyebrows furrowed, and his deep pupils had a somewhat complicated look. I didn't eat this month. I didn't work full. With that, he shoved breakfast into my arms. I was most afraid of hearing this, crying sadly, bowing my head and cooking silently. Just in time, he handed over another bottle of drink. Don't just eat. Drink some water. I'm choking. This bottle of water is too timely, but it would have been perfect if his voice had been a little quieter. He brought food and water, and everyone watched the two of us along the way. I've got snacks with me. Would you like some? Lambert Benson was afraid that I would be in a hurry after eating, so he took out a big bag of snacks. I was really scared, and hurriedly waved my hand. I dared to face the thick thighs, but I didn't dare to challenge the onlookers of the melon-eating crowd. Lambert Benson silently put away the snacks, his expression a little lost, as if he wanted to say something, but he couldn't say anything. When we arrived at our destination, we first went to the farmhouse to put our luggage in our room. Still, Ella and I were in a room. What's more, the first project of team building is water rafting. The groups were divided by room, and Ella and I disliked each other and got into the same drifting boat. My best friend, Chloe, was afraid that I would fight with her, so she asked me worriedly, "Why don't I replace you with you?" Before I could speak, Ella said angrily, "Don't change it. I'm afraid this boat will shake, and only Olivia Ted's weight can hold it down. Of course I can't afford it. Then you'll have to sit on the bow of the boat with your back to everybody." Ella was stunned. "What do you mean?" There is a saying that looks at the back and scares thousands of troops, and looks at the face to scare off 1,000,000 male soldiers. You. Ella was about to have a seizure, and her eyes turned to a sudden smile like a flower. As soon as I turned my head, Lambert Benson happened to come over, and he couldn't help but frown when he heard my words. He hesitated, with a straight face, and his voice was cold. "There are dangers in rafting, and colleagues take care of each other." I felt like he was connotating me. It must have been, when I heard what I said just now, that I emphasized it in particular. Ella seemed to change her face. "Don't worry, boss. We will be united and friendly." I nodded slightly. Silently, Ella joked about my weight, and I wasn't angry. But as soon as he spoke, my nose was sour, and I was inexplicably aggrieved. Looking at my attitude, he seemed to feel a little guilty and was about to say something, but was interrupted by Ella. Boss, don't you play rafting? Lambert Benson shook his head. I can't swim. Seasickness. You guys play. With that, he gave me a meaningful look and turned to leave. As it turned out, Ella was really incompatible. She didn't work hard in rowing, and she was very energetic in making enemies everywhere with a water gun. She uses waterproof makeup, and she can stay calm and elegant even after a few sprays with a water jet gun. But I can't do it. Unkempt, plain face, sprayed by a water gun, which is equivalent to washing my face. The hair was still sticking to the door of the head one by one. How miserable it was. That's when I realized the importance of equipment. Other people have brought water guns for team building, and no matter how bad they are, they still know how to bring a basin to splash people. So I have food in my bag. Discard. Everyone was having fun, and the bad taste appeared, and I saw two men lifting a girl and throwing it into the water, and the frightened girl lost her face and squeaked. I couldn't stand it anymore, and rushed over to help the girl out, but Ella started to heckle at the right time. Olivia, Ted wants to be thrown into the water by everyone. Don't let her go. I almost didn't breathe my breath. Before I could speak, I suddenly rose into the air and was lifted up by two obscene men with their heads and feet in their arms. I screamed in fright. Even if I didn't have obvious female features, they didn't really think of me as a woman, and they carried me to the water's edge. I kept struggling, and then I rushed over and helped me press my arms and legs. In a burst of applause, I threw myself into the water with a thud. My head buzzed, and I fell dizzy. I was a landlubber, struggling for a long time and not getting up, but choking on several mouthfuls of water. I was so frightened that I was splashing in the water, and an anxious voice suddenly sounded in my ears. Olivia, Ted. Immediately after, I was scooped up by a pair of large hands. Lambert Benson's red eyes suddenly appeared in front of him. The water wasn't deep, but I was still stunned, and my brain went blank. Lambert Benson's face was ugly and terrifying, and his air pressure was so low that he was afraid to speak. My face was mixed with snot and tears, but Lambert Benson didn't feel dirty, and dried the water stains for me with his hands. Seeing that I was fine, he breathed a sigh of relief, and his tone was full of guilt. I'm sorry, I'm late. My head was confused, and from his eyes, I saw that I cared. I'll carry you back. After speaking, he ignored the stunned eyes around him, and picked me up by the waist. I was too social to die, and I didn't dare to look at the eyes of the people around me, so I simply pretended to be an ostrich in his arms, with his head buried. His heartbeat was clear and powerful. I was panicked just now, but now I actually have an inexplicable sense of security. He hugged me without saying a word, but I was more relieved than ever. Lambert Benson hugged me, and the crowd consciously moved out of the way. As he passed Ella, he stopped suddenly. I was stunned, not knowing what he wanted to do, and looked up in amazement. Ella's face was unusually ugly, and she forced a smile. Lambert Benson. Lambert Benson's pupils constricted. He glared at Ella coldly, and whispered something in her ear. I didn't hear it, but Ella's face changed suddenly. Then he hugged me sideways and left without looking back. His physical strength was so good. He walked with me in his arms for more than 10 minutes, and his breath was not chaotic at all. Back at the BB, a low voice came from overhead. Did you bring a change of clothes? I shook my head. I'll be back tomorrow morning. Why do you bring so many clothes? Lambert Benson sighed and carried me into his room. His chuckle sounded overhead, still reluctant. Do you want me to hold you to change your clothes? I blushed and quickly got off him. I was soaking wet. The snug little inner was faintly visible. His t-shirt was also wet with me, and the outline of the six-pack abs was clearly visible. His ears were a little red, and he glanced down at me, and looked away instantly. He handed me a full set of clothes. You wear mine first. Hurry up and take a shower. Don't catch a cold. When I took a shower, my mind was as chaotic as water from a shower. Until now, the sound of his strong and powerful heartbeat is still so clear in my heart, and the sense of security he brings can't fool people. But he already has a girlfriend. Why did he treat me like this? I don't understand. I got dressed and came out, but I was shocked. He was naked, and as soon as I came out, my eyes were uncontrollably aimed at his abs. I blushed. Why don't you put your shirt on? He smiled wryly. I brought two with me. One was wet by you, and one was worn by you. All right, the excuse was perfect. He handed me another glass of ginger syrup. Drink this while it's hot to save you a cold. I took it and took a sip. My brows furrowed suddenly. Aggrieved like a cat. Bitter. He frowned, turned around and took out the snack I had rejected in the morning. Eat with these. Right. His tone was a little doting, and his eyes looked at me tenderly. I didn't dare to look at him. I lowered my head and took it, and the calories were successfully recharged. You can rest here. I'll have someone separate your room from Ella. When I saw him turn to leave, I called out to him. What are you doing? He laughed nonchalantly. Go out for a cigarette. Of course, if you can't bear me, you don't have to. It's okay to go out and smoke shirtless, but it's okay to commit murder with your belly. This incident in the morning made Evrion's atmosphere very embarrassing, and the atmosphere was not very high after coming back. In the afternoon, the personnel girl changed my room, and I was a little flattered to live in such a big room alone. As soon as I brought my luggage over, there was a knock on the door. Opened the door. It's Lambert Benson. He was wearing a dress that he didn't know who he had borrowed from. It was crumpled, but when he wore it, he looked unexpectedly good. He was followed by 4 other people, frowning. Aren't these the big wrongdoers, who threw me into the river? I took a breath. You. Lambert Benson turned around and kicked one of them. Still not apologetic. The 4 of them were tall and big, but they were trembling in front of Lambert Benson, and they didn't dare to come out, so they lined up and came over to apologize to me. They just have a bad taste. They don't care about anything when they play up, and I get angry after apologizing. I was afraid that they would be too embarrassed, so I hurriedly waved my hand. It's okay, I'm not good at water. Ha ha. The 4 of them were relieved to see that I was not angry, and looked at Lambert Benson aggrievedly. There's no next time. Lambert Benson's tone was cold, and his anger was clearly unsubdued. They nodded like garlic, and it seemed that they just wanted to leave as quickly as possible. Not leaving. Lambert Benson glared at the 4 impatiently. He seems to be a different person now. Cold, indifferent, and distant. I was stunned and a little surprised, but in the face of me, he was as docile as a golden retriever. He noticed my gaze, and the corners of his lips twitched, with a slight smile. Why are you looking at me, with a kind of look? Did you scare you? I shook my head. I didn't expect you to be fierce too. He was stunned for a moment, and suddenly sighed. My good temper is given to you. That's why you think I'm fierce to others. I was stunned. My heart was inexplicably sweet, but when I thought of Teresa Benson, my mood was inexplicably low again. Lambert Benson saw that I was in a bad mood, and thought I was still thinking about the morning, so he touched my hair, and said something that touched us deeply. Don't be depressed. I'll take you to eat roast whole lamb at night. In the evening, the company organized a bonfire party, and the atmosphere was very lively. After the incident in the morning, I found that everyone was much kinder to me than usual, and everyone familiar and unfamiliar mingled with me. I noticed that Ella was not there, and I was about to ask about it, when the roasted whole lamb was served. Immediately, the first command issued by the brain is to eat. Be a foodie. No worries. I forgot about her. After eating, the others sang and danced around the campfire. I don't like a lot of people, and besides, the girls sing better than the other people's voices are suitable for singing as soon as they hear it, unlike me, which is only suitable for doing nucleic acid. I was afraid of being embarrassed to go up, so I ran quietly while I was still conscious, and walked along the river alone to prepare for the next supper. I was a little drunk and walked staggeringly, but I was still conscious. At this time, a familiar voice suddenly sounded behind him. What are you doing alone by the river? I froze for a moment, then turned around, and Lambert Benson's wicked, smiling face crashed into my field of vision. The 2 thick eyebrows were curved, like the first quarter moon in the night sky, and a pair of deep eyes flashed below, and just one glance made it almost fall into it. I panicked as he stared at me. That one. Eat enough. Eliminate the food. Discard. It seems a bit embarrassing to say it. He smiled and walked towards me, with his hands behind his back. It was pitch black here, just the two of us, and I couldn't help but bump into the fawn in my heart. As I got closer, he suddenly pulled out a wreath from behind my back, and fastened it to my head. I was stunned. He picked the corners of his lips and nodded in satisfaction. Well, it's pretty to wear. Although I had drunk, my consciousness was still quite clear, and I subconsciously took 2 steps back. Lambert Benson smiled and said in a hoarse voice, "Don't like it." I took a deep breath and mustered up the courage of my life. "You've got Teresa Benson. It's not a good fit." He frowned. "Who are you listening to? I've seen with my own eyes. Teresa Benson has come to the company to look for you, wearing the shoes you gave her." Lambert Benson looked confused. "How did I not know I gave her shoes?" "Don't pretend. The slippers you asked me to pick out for you that day. She wore them that day." Lambert Benson seemed to remember something, and the corners of his lips lifted, and he reached out to pull me. "Go somewhere with me." "Where?" "Go to my room." Lambert Benson was afraid that I would misunderstand, and after a long mental construction for me, I stepped into his room. He opened his luggage and pulled out a delicately packaged box from inside. "Open it and see it." With a puzzled look on my face, I took it and opened it to see that it was the pair of shoes I had picked out for him. New. I looked up and met a pair of gentle eyes. "I saw that the heel of the slippers you were wearing was broken, so I wanted to give you a new pair. I was going to wait until you give it to you on your birthday next month." I didn't expect Teresa Benson to have these shoes too. These shoes are this year's hit, a must-have for internet celebrities, and it is normal to bump into them. He chuckled lowly. "She came to the company that day. In fact, to say goodbye to me. She went to study abroad." "I see." Lambert Benson's obsidian eyes shone and his tone was softly unpresentable. "It turns out that you deliberately avoided me some time ago, and that's why." My ears burned, I admit. "Indeed." He came closer, his warm breath spraying his face, and my heart was thundering. "And you like me?" My heart went up and down. "I've always been liked." "A little idiot." He touched my head, and his tone was spoiled. "Oh, my God. The little deer in my heart is about to hit a cerebral thrombosis." He took my hand, and the warm feeling came out of his palm, and he felt an inexplicable sense of security. "When did you like me?" "Before I got drunk. I didn't have anything to do with him." And I looked at him in a daze, wondering when he liked me. Lambert Benson chuckled a few times, and couldn't help but reach out and pinch my face. "Do you believe that my heart is pounding for a moment?" "I believe it, but I don't believe that this kind of thing can happen to me." Lambert Benson smiled again. "The night you broke into my room drunk. You like an alcoholic." "I drank too much." "I don't know too much." Lambert Benson smiled wryly. "Not a drunkard, just a drunken fairy. His mouth is sweet enough, but I haven't finished it yet." And then, actually, I fell out of love that day, and I was drinking to kill my sorrows. And you came in. You said something to me at that time. What wise words did I say at the time? You put your arms around my shoulders, and said to me, "Say what? From now on, they will be brothers by day, and husband and wife by night." Discard. Lambert Benson chuckled. "You told me that night, no matter how bad your mood is, you have to smile at the people who matter to you." That's just like what I said. At the time, I thought that if I could say such profound things, I must be a very interesting girl. I smiled wryly. "Then it looks like I've let you down." "No, it's really funny and cute." My heart was sweet. "So it's because you're also out of love, that you're willing to accompany me to see the scumbag the next day?" Lambert Benson nodded. "Coincidentally, I'm about the same as you, and I was also broken up." "Coincidentally?" "No." "One last question. What about Ella? What did you say to her during the day?" "I didn't hear you." Lambert Benson sneered. "I'm going to transfer her out and talk to her again." "Don't." Lambert Benson raised an eyebrow, his eyes full of questions. I looked at him seriously. "I don't want you to use your power because of me. It's not good for you or me. She is doing this to me today. It has nothing to do with work, but that's what she did to you. Don't worry, I'll take care of her." If it were only you, then the problems that I couldn't solve in this company would still not be able to be solved in the next company. I exhaled. "Let me face myself." Lambert Benson nodded, his obsidian eyes shining. Since my girlfriend said so. Okay. My little face turned red. Who's your girlfriend? They haven't agreed yet. So what? Isn't it time to say yes? After saying that, Lambert Benson lowered his head slightly, and a warm kiss suddenly blocked my mouth. I've relied on you in this life, and I can't escape. The end.